It was an ordinary day in the golf world until Wesley Bryan stirred up chaos. The suspended PGA pro fired off a single tweet that triggered one of the biggest controversies golf fans had seen in years. "Dear traditional golf media writers, stay away from YouTube golf. What y'all are doing to Grant Horvat is a joke." That one sentence exploded across social media within the hour, and the backlash was immediate. But to understand the full impact, you need to know what had already been simmering beneath the surface. Just 3 months earlier, Bryan had been suspended indefinitely by the PGA Tour for taking part in a creator-led live event called DS Miami, something he defended as being true to his identity, while the PGA saw it as a serious violation. With his professional career on hold, Bryan turned his frustration towards the sport's traditional media, igniting a firestorm. The spark: a brewing controversy around Grant Horvat, a rising YouTube golf star who turned down an invite to the Barracuda Championship because PGA rules wouldn't allow him to film. At a time when golf is desperate to connect with younger fans, that decision felt regressive, and Bryan called it out. But instead of rallying behind him, fans accused him of hijacking the moment for attention. The response was swift and harsh. Instagram Reels broke down the tweet. X Threads labeled him bitter and self-absorbed. And what started as a call-out quickly became a PR disaster. Wesley Bryan's tweet was meant to be a stand for Grant Horvat, but it quickly spiraled into something else entirely. What began as a show of support turned into a PR meltdown, with even former fans of Bryan Brothers Golf openly questioning whether he'd lost his way. The conversation shifted from Horvat to Bryan himself, and the comment sections were ruthless. Bryan had taken aim at the media but ended up damaging his own reputation. And the worst part was, he didn't seem to realize it. That realization, however, was coming fast. If Bryan thought his tweet would make him a champion for YouTube golf, he badly miscalculated. The backlash wasn't just critical, it was explosive. Words like unprofessional, tone-deaf, and attention-seeking flooded his mentions within minutes. By midday, he was trending across golf social media, and not in a flattering way. This time, even his most loyal supporters remained silent. One user wrote, "This isn't about defending Grant, it's about Bryan trying to stay relevant." Another added, "He's literally suspended and still blaming others. Grow up." Even commentators who usually avoid drama weighed in, and, according to the Golfing Gazette, anonymous tours insiders called the tweet a distraction that torched what little goodwill Bryan had left. Perhaps the most deafening reaction came from Grant Horvat himself. No reply, no repost, not even a like. That silence spoke volumes. As Sportsca noted, the broader YouTube golf community also kept its distance, likely wary of being dragged into Bryan's controversy. And let's not forget, this wasn't his first incident. Back in April 2025, Bryan had already been indefinitely suspended by the PGA Tour for participating in DS Miami, a creator-driven live event that the tour saw as a breach of conduct. Now, with this new firestorm, it was clear Bryan hadn't just crossed a line, he'd burned a bridge. Wesley Bryan's involvement in the DS Miami event was a direct violation of PGA regulations. And while some fans initially praised him as a trailblazer challenging the establishment, that underdog image didn't last. By July, the narrative had flipped. Instead of being seen as a voice for change, Bryan appeared more like someone lobbing accusations from a glass house. Once respected across both traditional and influencer golf circles, he now found himself alienated from both, and the fan backlash was just gaining momentum. Less than 24 hours after his controversial tweet went viral, Bryan returned to X. The damage was undeniable. Media coverage was intense, fans were livid, and replies were merciless. Then, just as suddenly as it started, Bryan backed down. Upon further review, "I was emotional. Sorry." No context, no mention of Grant Horvat, no explanations, just 7 cold words. If he thought that would calm the storm, he was mistaken. The outrage quickly turned to ridicule. One reply read, "You weren't emotional, you were clout chasing." Others slammed the apology as hollow, calling it classic PR damage control. "The most corporate non-apology I've ever seen," one fan wrote, and they had a point. The tone was flat, sterile, missing Bryan's usual charm, humor, and authenticity. Even Sportsca noted how the timing made it feel more like strategic cleanup than genuine regret. For someone who built his brand on being real, that misstep cut deep. The influencer golf world, once seemingly in his corner, responded with silence. Grant Horvat gave no acknowledgement. Rick Shields and Good Golf offered no support, not even a subtle Instagram story. The message was clear, they were keeping their distance. One Reddit user even joked, "Bryan Brothers just got ghosted by YouTube Golf." And in a space built on collaborations, loyalty, and mutual support, that kind of silence said everything. The silence from the golf world was deafening. Wesley Bryan had tried to walk back his words, but rather than repairing his image, the apology only deepened the damage. Now he wasn't just seen as impulsive, he was seen as inauthentic. And once that perception sets in, it rarely leaves. Bryan was once considered one of the good guys, the quirky, relatable underdog who chipped wedges off concrete and made PGA Tour fans laugh through YouTube before it was trendy. He showed that golf could be loose, fun, even chaotic. But somewhere along the way, that goodwill eroded. On by July 2025, it collapsed completely. Rewind to April, when Bryan was suspended by the PGA Tour for participating in the DS Miami event, a creator-driven showcase that violated tour policy. It wasn't just the act, it was his attitude. Rather than acknowledge the conflict, Bryan leaned into the controversy, declaring it a win for content creators and focusing more on YouTube than on rebuilding trust. That decision split his audience. Some still saw a bold maverick, while others saw someone torching the sport that made him. Things only unraveled further. By July, Bryan made his debut at the BMW International Open on the DP World Tour, finishing tied for 64th, a result Golf Monthly called solid but forgettable. Fans barely noticed. For someone trying to prove he still belonged in professional golf, it was more of a whimper than a comeback. And with each passing week, his relevance seemed to fade. Even his once popular brand, Bryan Brothers Golf, began to show signs of decline. According to the Golfing Gazette, engagement on his content dropped sharply in July, proof that, for many, the magic was gone. The shift was undeniable. Comment sections were filled with questions like, what happened to the fun? And why are they acting so bitter now? The energy that once made Bryan Brothers Golf feel fresh and exciting had faded. The smiles were gone. The vibe was off. And when your own fans start questioning whether you've changed, that's often the beginning of the end. Wesley Bryan had always walked a tightrope between two worlds, PGA Tour champion and YouTube pioneer, but in trying to straddle both, he now risked falling through the cracks of each. And the real blow hadn't even landed yet. Beneath all the noise was a deeper, more important question: where is golf going? Bryan didn't just post a controversial tweet, he lit a fuse that exposed the widening rift within the sport, a clash between tradition and disruption, between the buttoned-up world of the PGA Tour and the raw, fast-paced universe of YouTube golf. And that kind of battle isn't settled with a single deleted post. While Bryan's words "stay away from YouTube golf" sounded like a defense of creator content, many saw it as a personal vendetta disguised as advocacy. Was he standing up for rising talent like Grant Horvat, or lashing out at a system that had already shut him out? That line blurred quickly, and when intent becomes murky, the message loses its power. This entire saga has exposed just how fragile golf's relationship with media really is. From Horvat's silence, to the rigid filming rules, to Bryan's public backlash, it all points to a sport struggling to adapt in a social media era. Traditionalists want control, creators want freedom, and at the moment neither side seems to be winning. Golf is clearly evolving, but no one knows what it's evolving into. So, what now? Does Wesley Bryan become a cautionary tale for influencers who speak out, or does this controversy finally force golf's governing bodies to embrace new voices, new formats, and a new generation of fans? One thing is certain: this moment was about more than just a tweet. It was a flashpoint for the future of the game. The only question left is, did Wesley Bryan go too far, or was he simply saying what needed to be said?